Day 820 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is a super quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So, starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 498,000 military personnel losses. And given the daily loss rates, like today at 1,240, we know what that means for tomorrow. Then, as for hardware losses, 13 tanks, 27 APVs, 42 artillery, 3 multiple rocket launchers, 56 tin cans, and 1 Su-25 aircraft, again. So we'll head across to the map today, and starting out in Crimea, as explosions rocked the night in the peninsula, as Russian reports emerged from Simferopol, Sevastopol, Saki, Alushta, and a few others. With, for instance, a video surfacing depicting an explosion in Alushta, with at least 5 detonations reported. And in that particular video, we heard the Ukrainian citizens in occupied Crimea laughing at the missile strikes, with that one reportedly to be on a Russian military base. So, as you can see, no matter how many flags you put on your semicircle rotunda on the left there, it doesn't look like you're gonna win hearts. Also, Russian telegram channels were blowing up, stating a massive combined strike from Ukrainian-operated ATACMS missiles, and even they mentioned the Rs-360 missiles, which are the in-house or Ukrainian-produced Neptune missiles. So this most recent series of incidents follows previous attacks in the region, for instance at the Belbek airfield, pretty much 3 days in a row, where resulting images showed us the loss of a number of Russian aircraft. But as for this latest event, we're sure to see definitely a lot more upcoming footage or videos of what exactly happened with the amount of devastation that has seemed to have been caused on the Russian military. Then we'll head a bit further north on the map as intense battles rage in the north of the Kharkiv oblast still, as Russian troops find themselves mired in the streets of Vovchansk, as the Russian forces continue to take heavy losses, which is either implied or flat out stated by either side now. And so far, despite deploying reserves, the Russian offensive has lost its steam, or not presenting any additional and observable traction right now, with Ukrainian defenses holding fairly firm. But take that with a grain of salt if you will, although reportedly, where the fighting extends to Lipsy, some Russian social media channels have reported that the Russian army has switched gears here to active defenses, with mining the area and targeting Ukrainian positions. Then headed a bit further southeast on the map today, as briefly we head to the Terny direction once again, as 6 Russian assaults were repelled at Terny and Torsk in the past day. All as the location continues to seem to put on display for the Russian forces just how much of a bridge too far it really is. With that turn of phrase, in fact, being quite an accurate military expression for the situation, dating back to the Allied forces' offensive operations in World War II. Then, somewhere in the east, we will take a look now on the map as, okay, so starting off, we saw a Swedish-supplied Archer artillery system in Ukrainian service that continues to prove to be effective in the counter-battery role, seen here hunting down and destroying multiple Russian towed howitzer positions. Then, also in the east, due to coordinates provided by the Ukrainian-operated Shark UAV, which is a long-range recon drone, led to HIMARS strikes being successful in taking out a Russian Zytel electronic warfare complex. Then, in a similar fashion, Ukrainian soldiers from the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade attacked a Russian 240mm self-propelled howitzer, the Tulpan, quite a heavy hitter in the Kharkiv region. So as you see here, 1 scout drone and 1 FPV drone. Then also, we continue to see high-quality counter-battery fire by Ukrainian artillery brigades in the eastern direction. And I want to make a point of this because we're seeming to come across more and more of this type of footage now, as it pertains to successful artillery shelling onto enemy positions at an increased rate than we have seen before in the recent past, which does tend to indicate the shell ammunition resupplies are trickling through. Then also in the east again, we saw a Russian T-64 tank getting destroyed in the upper Luhansk region. But not to be outdone, and then for some good measure, we also saw another Russian T-72 tank get destroyed as well. And so we're seeing a decreased incidence rate or decline in the destruction of such a tank variant, the T-72. Which is a relevant point to bring up here because they are the tank variant that Russia has the most of or had the most of. In fact, I have a lot of stats on that subject and I might do a small piece on that soon as well. Then headed across to some news for today. So the first batch of Ukrainian pilots have graduated from F-16 training at an Arizona military base, which is a crucial step towards putting the capable jets into Ukrainian airspace. And this latest update also comes just after the training completion of maintenance crews from just a few days earlier. So combining these two pieces of news, this is all really starting to set the framework for getting those jets operational into Ukraine. Then in some more news, Norway announced a new military assistance package worth approximately $190 million for Ukraine. This latest contribution, made through the International Fund for Ukraine, or the IFU, will bolster Ukraine's air defense and naval capabilities, radar, anti-drone systems, and boats. So the IFU, collectively financed by the UK, the Netherlands, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Lithuania, oh, and Iceland too, can't forget them, underscores the unified effort to support Ukraine in its ongoing struggle. Then in some more news, the United States is set to bolster Ukraine's military with a fresh tranche of aid worth $275 million, as reported by the Associated Press, citing American officials. This contribution is said to include more of the highly effective HIMARS installations, along with the 105 and 155mm artillery shells for the armed forces of Ukraine. And so this latest package marks the fourth installment of US military assistance since Congress passed a bill supporting Ukraine just a month ago. Then headed across to a couple of Russian economy news segment updates. So in a retaliatory move, Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a decree authorizing the confiscation of assets belonging to US citizens and companies as compensation for Russian assets seized by the United States. So this latest action comes in response to the recent approval of the Repo Act by the US Congress, which would allow the Biden administration to seize Russian assets held in American banks and redirect them to Ukraine. And with an estimated $300 billion in Russian assets immobilized by Western countries, including around $5 billion in the US, the decree enables Russian entities to appeal to courts regarding the unjustified seizure of their assets, with the Russian government potentially offering US assets in Russia as compensation. So, since Putin can't afford to keep the oligarchs' fortunes in good stead, which is something we've learned about prior, so instead he's looking to reappropriate existing assets within Russia so as to quieten the tumultuous waters that is the hierarchical structure of the Russian oligarchy. Now, a lot of this turns out to be great news for Western countries and Ukraine, as Putin has just gone the whole hog and legitimized these types of actions globally. Which ultimately means Western countries will no longer just look to siphon off profits derived from the base frozen Russian assets, as instead they'll sooner or later take the whole 300 billion cake, if you will, which will therefore only seek to help make Putin aid in funding a war against himself. And so this reminds me of when Putin erroneously spoke of the Patriot air defense systems before their first delivery into Ukraine and said something like, "They're old technology junk, just let them come." And they came, and junk they were not, being very successful against Russia's most propagandized super weapon missiles. And look where we are now. Russian physicists are going to jail because of it. Ah, the circle of life. Then into some more economy-related news, Rosneft, Russia's state-controlled oil giant, has appealed to the Kremlin for tax breaks to offset the mounting costs of protecting its own refineries from Ukrainian drone strikes. So in a letter to the Russian Prime Minister, Mishustin, Rosneft's CEO, Igor Sechin, reportedly a close ally of President Vladimir Putin, highlighted the necessity of implementing extensive and expensive measures to safeguard oil facilities against the increasing Ukrainian drone air incursion risks. And most recently, the company has been forced to suspend operations at several refineries, including Syzran and Ryazan, Kubyshev and Tuapse, due to the attacks, which have targeted Russia's oil industry, and furthermore targeted a crucial pillar of its war funding efforts for Ukraine. And the Rosneft CEO also noted that Western sanctions have hindered efforts to modernize the refineries, limiting equipment supplies and driving up logistics and construction costs. Moreover, the drone strikes have successfully pressured Russia's fuel supplies, causing gasoline and diesel prices to surge for Russian consumers, undermining a key source of Moscow's counted-on tax revenue. So, the strained Russian energy giants are clearly living under some crippling economic conditions, with quite the worrisomely worded letter to the Russian PM on this. But hey, maybe this story relates to the previous news piece, where Putin will hand over the keys to some of these frozen Western production facility assets held within Russia, just as some useless attempt to actually resolve a much deeper-seated issue at hand for Russia, which of course is their inherently botched invasion of Ukraine. Then we'll head across to some purge news, as the Russian military is undergoing a significant upheaval as arrests and dismissals of high-ranking officials continue, with rumors suggesting a campaign against Defense Minister Shoigu and his allies. Shoigu's chief of staff and press secretary have resigned, while a close associate faces accusations of fraud, and speculations also mount that evidence is being gathered against Shoigu himself, with Putin likely aware of the developments. Also, General Gerasimov, Russia's top military commander, may also face removal, following a similar pattern of criminal cases against his deputies and inner circle. And do note, as it stands, we have only seen Gerasimov once every 3 months if we're lucky. He was also nowhere to be found at the annual military parade just 2 weeks ago, which is a bit suspicious to say the least. So this purge we see playing out, likely driven by power struggles within the Kremlin, think of it as the minion factions, appears to signal a significant restructuring of Russia's military leadership amid the ongoing war in Ukraine. The Great Russian Purge. Although, it does occur to me, there's only one such purging required, to make everybody else's problems go away. Then headed across to a couple of quick funnies to round it all off for today, guys. So, a drone was seen carrying a Ukrainian flag in Russia's St. Petersburg region, as it ended up getting stuck on the electricity lines. And I'm not sure if that was by design or not, but it's actually a great place for it to end up, and more difficult to get down at a moment's notice. I wonder how long it will stay up there. Then as for a quick funny to round it off with today, guys, so remember Russia's murky threat posted on their Interior Ministry website to unilaterally change maritime borders in the Baltic Sea and the Gulf of Finland? Well, after some well-justified international outrage, they withdrew the statements from their website the very next day. So I do wonder, but Russia may have momentarily forgot, during all of their mafia-style bullying that they do, that Finland, for instance, is now a part of NATO. Not a great plan. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment, subscribe, all of the above and more. Thanks again for the support so much. I really do appreciate it. You'll never know how much, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.